it starts with understanding about the problems and issues around aquaculture in this tropical climate in Singapore. Issues such as algae bloom, pollution, and also the restriction of use of energy, which is energy costs, and things like that, prompts us to really understand what are the technological solutions that can actually help some of these local farmers. So, for example, the case study that you have mentioned just now about having a land-based aquaculture using the what you call the RAS system, the recycling aquaculture system. So you're growing fish in a containment system on land, and that's where you need to understand the kind of nutrients the fish needs and kind of a high stocking density of your fish, and that creates a certain different ecosystem compared to ocean farming. And by understanding that kind of different system through science and observation and things like using sensors to detect the stress and the condition of the RAS system, it's very important. This talks about even understanding the behavior of fish and the health condition. All these are part and parcel of how we can transform the aquaculture industry.
Tell me some other of your exciting projects that you're working on at A-Star.
Oh, okay. Besides the fish, the farm, and the food tech, now I think I'd like to talk about future food. I think you have heard about the stories about alternative protein. So this is coming up as a emerging, new, exciting area for Singapore. Talking about cultured meat, for example, plant-based protein, having things like microbial protein growing in bioreactors. So you don't need to grow things on land per se, but really in a bioreactor. So this is another exciting thing that A-Star is actually looking at.
Would you give me an example? You're actually, so there's a couple of things in that realm, isn't it? There's protein from plant-based materials that replicates meat, and then there's actual growing of real meat in a lab.
Right.
Which ones are you looking at, and where are you in the development of that?
Okay, we are looking at several of these concurrently, and we want to nurture the best in class to actually take a look at some of these subdomain areas, whether it's cultured meat, plant-based protein, or even microbial protein like algae, for example. And we've been working with startups quite rapidly in this area, helping them to see the potential of what you say scaling is important, but also injecting the kind of unique IP or intellectual property, because for startup, I think this is very important for them to be able to get further investment to grow. Yeah, so, for example, we've been working with this company called Eat2B. It's a local startup, and their mission is simple but a complex one. They would like to increase the nutrient bioavailability of plant-based and microbial protein. So what we do is we incubate the scientists of Eat2B together with our A-Star scientists, and they begin to work together to understand what are the properties that's needed and the nutrients required, and how we develop certain extraction technologies for them to do this at a scalable approach.
These lab-grown meats, are they market ready, or are you still thinking about their safety and their place in the regulatory system?
Oh, it's still under discussion right now, and we're looking at the different safety aspect of cultured meat, for example. It's not only the tissue culture, the material, but also the surrounding media, the growth condition, and the whole process itself. I would say that it is not in the market, as you can see today, but I mean, locally in Singapore, we've been talking to companies, bringing them to talk to SFA, and this is a very positive sign of how people develop their solution at an early stage and then looking into the future and what is needed in order for them to commercialize.
In terms of the consumer side of things, we're already seeing impossible meats and beyond meat increasingly available in Singapore. I've seen it sprouting everywhere, and I've tried them, and they're very good. But are you seeing this as being a big part of the consumer market, or just an addition?
I think consumers are now more accepting towards more sustainable food sources. Instead of turning to your conventional steak and meat, I think they're willing, especially Asian consumers are very adventurous eaters. They're thinking about new menu, new palette, from plant-based proteins seem to be healthier for them and more sustainable. I think what we need to really diversify our palette is understanding that like eating impossible foods and all these new ingredients in terms of having it as a burger may not be something that is appealing to us on a day-to-day basis. And some of the companies are very innovative. They think about the Asian way and Asian cuisine of how they can localize some of these plant-based material. And you can see that it's been made into a pao or a dim sum, soft shell crab and kind of thing. It's also it's a lot of variety, a lot of options to choose from. So people just see the burger, but it's more than that burger.
So we talked about aquaculture, we've talked about synthetic meats. What about vegetables and hydroponic technologies? I know there's a lot of experiments in Singapore going on around that kind of agriculture. Tell us a few examples of what you're working on and what seems to be the most promising.
Yeah, I would give you an example, Timur, about a company that we've been working in. It's totally growing their vegetables in an entirely controlled environment. They are called Archisant, and been working for them a few years now to actually understand about the crop cycle, crop science, about growing it in an indoor environment, which is something new. And this is how we can use data science and having an integrated software platform to capture data on the real-time mode and to see where are the things that can optimize the potential of growth of plants, having them to extend to more growth cycles, for example, using less nutrients, less energy, and less water. So all these requires a lot of patience, but a lot of intuitive science and where bio and engineering comes together.
Can we just flip the switch on this multiple times and replicate this kind of technology? And if so, which ones actually work? Again, I'm thinking in terms of if there's a growing city somewhere in China or in Myanmar where they're thinking we have supply chain issues with getting food in there, maybe we should begin to think about domestic production. Are these technologies ready to be flipped out into environments like that?
Yes, there are actually ready systems like this. For example, crop recipes that are being sold together with a indoor farm container system. They have a plug and play model sometimes in different parts of the city. And these are the things that need to be optimized, need to be very modular in a sense because each environment is different and each crop and its variety is also different, and depending on the kind of even taste of the crops that we want to derive, the kind of nutrient profiles we want to get from them. So this all needs optimization, but I would think that the technology and innovation is out there. It's having people to adopt them, customize them, and re-optimize certain parameters so that the cost can be palatable to the business operators.
You talked about the CapEx earlier on. I mean, are these things really capital intensive, or can small cities, small enterprises, small entrepreneurs think about being able to deploy this?
I would say that a lot of our new businesses in Singapore are moving towards adopting some of these indoor control environment system, and it can be quite affordable to them. The issue is really how to optimize energy usage and the operating costs. The capex investment is one time, but there's subsequent costs in relations to the operation itself. So I think that we need to use innovation and technology in a way that it is affordable for some of these local enterprises, especially the startups who are just beginning to test some of these models and system. And that's when we need to work hand in hand together and understanding their issues on a day-to-day basis.
Let me ask you a very general question. Of all the technologies and the projects and the businesses that you have seen and you have worked with, which one would you say, in terms of the tech involved and the science involved, has the potential to make the most impact in the broader context of the Asian requirement for more nutritious food?
Well, this is the $1 million question. That's why we're involved in all the three in Singapore. We're being very ambitious. But I would say that in terms of understanding the protein requirements, as we can read in the recent FAO report just released in June, there will be some protein deficiency in some of these Asian regions. And I think that in order to make it solvable, for example, I think aquaculture could be one that we should invest our efforts in science in terms of building the right capabilities in meeting the local consumption as well as the export potential, as mentioned earlier. I think that is important because I think in Asia, a lot of people like seafood, and it's been seen as a status symbol on their plate, and this is something that is very acceptable to the consumers. And making this available, on a day-to-day basis, I think it's